Boo. Go on, have a good laugh. Welcome back to Stitchy Bee. I'm Cheryl Temple, and no, I haven't lost it. This week, it's all about making a shower cap. Here's mine. Let's get going. Before we do, thank you so much for your lovely comments last week. I can't thank you enough. You were so kind and lovely about my mum and my daft hair and everything else. It really cheered me up. So thank you so much. I think I've just about managed to reply to everybody now. Thank you. It was really, really kind of you. Okay, on to some fun stuff. So let's gather together what we need to make our shower cap. Firstly, we need to think about the fabric. Choose something lightweight, maybe like a viscose. I've found this little floral remnant that I had, which would work really well because it dries quickly. It's a little bit slippy, so if you want something more robust and easy to work with, choose a cotton poplin, something with a nice bright print. This is really easy to sew, and it'll look great with a bright ribbon on. This is a poly cotton, also works well. Maybe you've got some in your stash and you don't know what to make from it in terms of clothes. It's perfect for a shower cap instead. Or if you want to make life really difficult for yourself, use the satin. This is what I used to make most of my caps in. It's really not easy if you're going to make a one-off because it slips around with the lining. I'm going to do it in this and I'll show you how it works. And of course, the beauty of making these is you can go as mad as you like, and this is a half-made Union Jack one. So if you're making them for gifts, you could choose somebody's team colours, you could choose somebody's flag. I once made one from a Jamaican flag once for a chap, and that was really great. And they make really beautiful gifts. So to go with the fabric, you need some satin if you want to add a bow on the top. I use these wide double-faced satins, and you can get a range of colours. If I was going to make this one, I need to find a white one somewhere. I think I've used all my white ribbon on your parcels. So we'll find some somewhere. But yeah, this would look beautiful with a lovely big white satin bow. So we'll get that for you. But yeah, you can just go as mad as you like with the colour combos, and it's quite fun putting that together. To line the shower cap, because you need it to be shower proof, you need a shower curtain. This is the easiest thing to find and buy. Most supermarkets sell them. This one's from George at Asda, which is our Walmart, and I think I paid £2 for this, and you can get a few out of one of these. They're 180 by 180, so you could get probably 5 out of this if you wanted to make a few. So it's really inexpensive. To make the elastic casing and the elastic, you need a length of, I think this is 6mm elastic, so this thin one. I used to buy it in bulk. This is a 250m reel. You only need about 1 metre of this from memory. We'll work it out as we go through and you can see when I get to that. So yeah, that's quite easy to do. And then of course, to make the casing for that, you need some bias binding. You could make this yourself, a little channel. You could just use some twill tape if you've got some of that in, but make sure it's wide enough to make it a little bit easier for yourself. This is 19mm wide as it's folded. So this is easy to work with. I used to choose the satin one because I found it more comfortable on the hairline. It's one of the reasons I used to make shower caps, because I hated the scratchy ones you bought in the chemist. So I wanted something that felt more luxury and comfortable on the head. So I chose satin. It washes really well, this too. And it comes in other colours. A white one would work really well with the white polka dots, for example. And of course you'll need your pins and your regular stuff to sew with. I'm sure you know all that. So first up, we're going to make a template for the actual shower cap itself. Now, the way I did it was to make a semicircle shape first. It's easier, and drawing a perfect circle is not as easy as you think. I bought one of these off eBay, which is a giant compass. It reminds me of school. Did your teachers have these? And they used to use a chalk, didn't they, and do circles in our maths and chemistry lessons. Anyway, this looks homemade, so I've no idea where you'd pick it. You could probably get these now. I don't think Amazon was around when I bought this. So I've just taped, it's very technical, taped a pencil to it. There's a sharp point there, and then you can draw your semicircle or a full circle if you wanted to the diameter that you want. And my shower caps used to be 60 centimetres across, and that was a little bit larger than the ones you could get in the shops, mainly because I had more hair and I wanted something a little bit more bouffant and a bit kitsch. So you can make them smaller if you've got a small head. But what I do is just make them all 60 centimetres, and then if you want it tighter, just tie your elastic a little bit tighter. And I'll show you how to get the perfect fit for those when we come on to that part. Okay, let's get going and make the template first. So this is my template that I've cut out. This is one I used to work with lots. So I made it from fabric. You can make yours in paper. I just found it easier to work with in fabric. And if the actual diameter of the circle is 60 centimetres, that's across the whole circle, then that part there, the radius, needs to be 30 centimetres. So draw a semicircle on your template, however you want to, because I appreciate these are a bit odd to find, and then create that there. Okie doke, so the pins are in, and I'm going to cut it out now. You might want more pins if you're not that confident, but because this is on a mat that's not slippy, I'm fairly confident that this is going to be okay. Okay, next we're going to unravel the shower curtain, and what we want to do is pop on your actual cut out fabric straight onto this. I wouldn't cut out a circle from the actual template because I don't think they match up as well as when you need to cut them out together. So we'll pop this on. There we go. I'll line it up nicely with the corner so we're not wasting the rest. Now, what we need to do is pin that all the way around and then cut it out. There we go, it's been pinned to within an inch of its life now, so we're ready to start sewing it together. Let's go to the sewing machine. Ready to sew. So here we are at the Singer. It's a bit noisy, so bear with. So all we're going to do is sew all around the edge of the circle, taking the pins out as we go. Don't sew over your pins. And I tend to sew about 1 centimetre from the edge. You can make it more if you want to, because we are going to trim it later, so don't leave too small amount. We're all finished, nice and neat. If it does fold over and make a little fold because the fabric's bunched up, don't worry about it, it's fine. Because we're going to put elastic in, it's all going to ruffle up anyway, so don't worry too much. And there we go, we need to trim off the excess, and then I'll take you to the next stage. Right, now for the fun part. Okay. So what we're going to do next is to bind the edge of the actual shower cap, and that's what gives it a nice finish. Because we've sewn both layers of the fabric together with the right side up, then we need to finish the edge in a nice way. So I've trimmed the seam allowance and left a few millimetres after the stitch line, just for safety really. But we're going to cover that up with our bias binding. Now there are a few ways to sew this, and you'll find lots of tutorials as to how to sew it when you unfold it, stitch one side and then fold it round and then stitch the other. But I found it a bit hit and miss, especially when you're sewing a large area like this. It's difficult to get it perfect every time. Maybe okay for a little sleeve perhaps, but I think if you're doing something that's really visible, it's nice to get a professional finish. So I discovered this, which is a bias binding folder. And what it does is it lets you sew your bias binding in one go. So you will pop in your binding like so. Sorry, it's difficult to do while I'm showing you. That feeds through there. You take a little pin and you poke it through. There we go. And then it comes out the other side and you feed your fabric through that little channel and you can see it stitches right in there in one go, perfectly aligned. And that's the difficulty with sewing bias. So I love this. You've got to be careful to get the right size for your bias binding. Now, annoyingly, my bias binding is 19mm wide. That's the folded size, that part. It's not the unfolded one. That's always confusing when buying bias, so double check that. And this is a 3/4 of an inch size bias folder, which just happens to also be 19mm. So you've got to have a bit of jiggery pokery to work that out. So buy the right one. Now for my machine, this screws on to the actual plate and there's 2 little holes on my sewing machine and the screws come with it here. So every time I want to use that, I just screw it in place and you've got to get it lined up properly. So it should sit right next to the foot. Don't let it interfere with the foot, so the foot still needs to come up and down. Just sits alongside it, it butts up close to it. So here we are, I've threaded the bias tape through the little folder, the foot's up, and just with a pin, you just need to ease that bias through so that it comes to just under the foot. Now we need to slot in the fabric. There we go. Make sure it's all lined up and then lower the presser foot. Make sure it's fitting nice and snug there. Now we're going to make a couple of stitches to get started. And just to lock that in place. Now the end's raw still on here, but that will be covered up when we finish it off. So all is well. And just let it feed through itself, just guide it through. So we're focusing on this part really. Everything else should take care of itself. If you've got it all lined up and the stitch should be neat. I'm using a stitch length of about 2.5. Just noticed my machine's not quite threaded properly there. Sneak that in there. There we go. Okay, away we go. Just take your time and sew it round. Now this is a really good finishing technique for necklines or cuffs, anything really that you want a nice neat finish. You can also do your bound seams this way, so you can finish the insides of your seams like this. That's called a Hong Kong finish, and it gives it a beautifully neat edge. Now what you just want to do is keep this part as snug as you can, don't let it fold over, just keep feeding it through as it goes. Now when you get near to the end, you'll notice there's a little gap, leave a gap, and I always trim off the threads just because I'm a neat freak. Let's trim them off. Okay, now what we want to do here is overlap this raw edge and to tuck it inside as well, so we just need to be a bit careful that that all lines up, and we need to go over it, and when we're sure that it's covered it up, just a couple of back stitches and then we're good to lift off. Now what we're going to do here is trim this part off, lift up the foot, and then you'll notice That's all finished, and there's a little tail here. But you can see how neat it is. It's a much nicer finish than trying to make sure you hit the back of it by hand. Okay, so I've trimmed off the little threads, and I'm going to shorten this now to about 1.5 inches or so. You can just guess. And then I'm going to fold it over, tuck it under like that, and then I'm going to place a few stitches there just to finish that off. And that's that finished. So we'll just trim off the threads. Be careful when you're working with satin as well. It doesn't like sharp scissors. And there we go. So we're nearly there. We've got our round circle starting to look a bit more like now. It's all neatly finished off. So all we've got to do next is to put the channel in for the elastic that's going to go around our heads. Now to do that, we need to sew bias binding about 2 inches from the edge. Now this is to taste really, so you need to think about how much you'd like the edge flicking out to the side. So I usually do about 2 inches. When I first started sewing this, I measured it and I dotted a little line all the way around the outside, and then I sewed my bias. I don't pin this stage because you don't really want to be pinning the other side of satin. So I'll show you how I do it. I do it by feel. I know I've done thousands, but it's quite easy. You can make the mark to give yourself a guide, but just take it steady, and I'll show you what I do next. So we're going to fold over the bias, pop it onto our shower cap, where the back seam was, if you remember where we finished it off, and just lay that down here. And it's probably just over 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches from the edge. And I'm going to sew that all the way round until we come back to this point, and then I'll show you what we do when they meet. And you have to bend it round into a curve as you go. I know it's a bit awkward this stage, but it's okay, the curve's not so bad. You just have to keep everything smooth. Now when you get near to the end, stop sewing a couple of inches from where the other one is. And you want to fold it over so that it butts up nicely. I fold it over twice. That's what we have so far. So all we need to do next is to finish off the inner circle side, and that will give us a nice channel. Next, we need to thread the elastic through the channel. Now to get the right length of elastic, you need to measure your head with it. And just work out, you want it to stay on your head. Work out where feels comfortable, which is about there for me, and pop a little pen mark. So don't trim that off because it really helps at this stage if your elastic's much longer than you need. Now to thread mine, I use one of these large tapestry style needles to thread mine. Ideally a bodkin's best, with a little bobble on the end so you know it's not going to go through, but I'm careful and this is okay. So what I do is, to stop it unthreading as you're going through, I just put half a knot in there, and that's enough to hold it. You don't want to go knot, you can knot it twice if you're worried. And we need to pop it through the first part of the channel and then gradually thread it through. And all we need to do is shuffle it along and pull it out. Shuffle it and then pull it. Keep shuffling along. Don't force it if you feel a bit of resistance, because you don't want it to come through to the satin side or the cotton side. There we go. And it's quite quick. Keep going. And then you'll see it come out the little channel at the other side. And when it's come out of the channel at the other side, turn the light down a bit because you're getting a bit blinded, aren't you? Then just pull it through and find your little mark that you made with your pen. There we go. And cut it off somewhere just after it. You want to leave yourself a bit of wiggle room so you can play with the sizing. I'm going to tie this in a knot fairly loosely so I can leave it like that and just then play around with it. So you don't want to lose the knot inside the channel. You just want to fill it out and then you can try it on and see if it fits. Now that's a bit loose on me, so I'm going to tighten it more. And this is where you can just keep playing around with it and seeing how it fits. A bit tighter. That's perfect for me. So what I'm going to do is finish that knot off properly by tying it again. Is my hair gone everywhere now? I know I'm way too close to the camera for you, I do apologise. Okay, we're going to trim off the ends and then you can lose the knot in the channel by wiggling it through and it will disappear if you just even out the folds and the gathers. And there we go. All that's left to do is the finishing touch, which is a bow. I've managed to find a tiny bit of white satin ribbon left. This is narrower than I'd like for the finish on this, but it'll do because it's white. I'll show you how I tie them to make them sit really neatly. And you can use this on your sewing as well, or for shoes or little finishes. Being able to do a bow like this is great. So what I do is I make a loop and then push that through, and if it's one-sided like this where there's a shiny side, you need to gradually just pull that through and then you can wiggle it through like that. I'll show you again. So you make a loop longer than you need the bow to be and wrap that round, being conscious of the right side. That makes it doubly difficult. You're better with double-sided satin bows if you can. That's it. And pull it tight. There we go. And then we're going to finish off the edges. I've not got the right scissors for this, but you get the idea. Okay. Now a little tip for you. To stop these edges fraying, you can burn them with a lighter. Be careful though, kids. Just a few stitches through. There you go. And that's anchored nicely there. And there it is. One finished shower cap. It's a beautiful gift. And if you wanted to be really keen, you could make a matching wash bag to go with it, which is quite nice. There's loads of tutorials and free patterns for those on Pinterest, so have a peep. Well, thank you so much for watching my daft little tutorial. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you again next time. Thank you. Bye for now.